This is Taking Stock on Bloomberg. I'm Pim Fox. Now, my next guest is the head of asset management at Deutsche Bank, helping to manage over $600 billion. And when he took over this job back in 2004, he quickly identified climate change as a future driving force of financial markets. Now, today, he turned on a nearly 70-foot-tall digital billboard in New York displaying the total amount of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. As I said, located in the heart of New York City, we have Kevin Parker right here. Thank you very much. Good to have you with us. Glad you got out of the rain and you're able to share with us this new carbon counting clock. Let's start there. What does this clock actually count?
Well, it counts metric tons of long-lived greenhouse gases in the atmosphere.
And how does it do this?
Well, we teamed up with the scientists from MIT. They rely on several dozen actual counters around the world that are placed on mountaintops and atolls and so forth, and take actual carbon and greenhouse gas readings from around the planet, and then calculate that into an actual number.
All right. Now, this number is important for not only investment reasons, we'll get to that, but
yes,
just from a scientific point of view, why
Absolutely.
is this number important for people to pay attention to?
Well, it's important because at some point in time, the atmosphere will become saturated. We've already passed the point when the natural carbon sinks in the atmosphere, which take in carbon like oceans and forests and so forth. And so that's why there's this additional greenhouse gas building up in the atmosphere, because we've surpassed the Earth's ability to absorb it naturally.
All right, so we've surpassed our ability to absorb it naturally. You became interested in it sort of naturally because of something growing in the soil. Explain a little bit about your wine background and how did that influence climate change?
Yeah, about 15 years ago, I being a wine lover, I had an opportunity to buy a small piece of a vineyard in France, and we went into the business and decided that. Well, we looked at the wine world and said, well, the best wines in the world happen to be made organically and biodynamically, which is not a well-known fact, frankly. But to this day, the most widely regarded wines in the world are made in this way. So we converted our vineyard over, really out of a concern for the sustainability of the soil. Excess fertilizers and pesticides and so forth actually result in dead soils, and dead soils produce dead wines, not surprisingly. And we wanted to make our soil live, and in order to do that, we had to bring it back to its natural state and allow it to exist in a natural state, and that's organics and biodynamics. That interest in sustainability in soil led me to start thinking about sustainability of all resources, water, air, and so forth, and energy. And then around the turn of the century, just 9 years ago, I started to get interested in renewable energy, and then got onto the issue of climate change and greenhouse gases, and really felt strongly that we just can't keep going the way we're going in putting up carbon into the atmosphere and not face the music at some point.
All right, we got about 20 seconds. We will continue the conversation, but how do you move from something that's drinkable to something that's bankable? What are some of the key issues that people need to pay attention to when you talk about climate change?
Well, you know, we're at the early stages in this country of people really being aware of the problem. And part of the reason we launched the counter was really to take a very complex subject and try to simplify it and make it tangible for people, converting that into a real-time number.
All right. Well, we're going to try to figure out if we can get a real-time sort of information download of some investment themes and that you might profit from. We're going to continue the conversation with Kevin Parker, the head of Deutsche Bank's Wealth Management Group. This is Taking Stock on Bloomberg.
Take a look where we are. Not only is it raining, we are surrounded by the massive use of electricity. If that electricity doesn't start coming out of renewable sources, out of low-emission sources, out of power plants that capture their CO2, or safe fourth-generation nuclear, or wind power, or solar power, we're really going to get soaked in the future, and we're going to need banks, major investment advisors to be moving trillions of dollars in the right direction to make this happen.
That was earlier today in the rain in front of where the world's first real-time carbon counter is now located above Manhattan's Madison Square Garden. That was Jeffrey Sachs. Now, this is Taking Stock. I'm Pim Fox. My guest is Kevin Parker. He's the global head of asset management at Deutsche Bank, helping to manage about $600 billion. He was the man who turned on the counter today. We're talking about investing in some of these themes of climate change. Let's get specific about cap and trade, right? Because this is one of the big issues. It's, as we were talking during the break, probably going to get passed pretty quickly by the House.
Yes.
The bill goes to the Senate. What exactly is cap and trade, and what does it mean?
Well, cap and trade is a way of putting a price on carbon as an externality. And if you talk to anybody in the climate change arena, what they're calling for, more than anything, the most important starting place for really tackling the issue of climate change starts with pricing the externality. We have to get past that issue, and cap and trade is a way of doing that.
Now, is that different than what's been going on in Europe?
It's not. Certain provisions of the bill will have things working somewhat differently. The details are yet to be hammered out. There's lots of changes going on and so forth. But for the most part, the cap and trade system will look similar.
All right. Now, the industries that are lining up against this and for it, they seem to be pretty basic, right? I mean, on the one hand, you've got oil companies, coal companies saying this is going to hurt their business, and those industries which don't burn or use fossil fuel, this is not going to be that much of a problem.
Right, and we think that the shift from a high carbon-based economy to a low carbon-based economy is going to create lots of winners and losers, and that's why we got into the business.
All right, now having gotten into the business, can you give us some specific insight into what investors ought to be doing with their capital to perhaps take advantage of the shift?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of the news and a lot of the focus has been on new energy, solar, wind, biofuels, and so forth. That's kind of captured the imagination of the average investor and certainly the media over the last couple of years. That's resulted in some booms and busts, which has certainly hurt the image of the industry. But we have always talked about the other side of the investment opportunity, which is really the bulk of it. And it has to do with efficiency and optimization of the current plant and equipment out there that supports a $100 trillion global economy. And there's some great opportunities in boring old things like windows and insulation.
Insulation, windows, what are things like smart meters, all these kinds of things?
Exactly. And there's a whole host of technology and new products and new technologies in what have been really sort of standard components of the existing economy and helping us conserve energy, manage our energy output more efficiently. These are the things that there are real investable companies out there today.
I'm glad you used the word conserve, because you don't necessarily hear that very much with any of the energy debate. Is there an opportunity that something like this carbon counting clock will spur conservation and more efficient use of the energy that we have?
We hope so. We are really targeting the clock to really raise awareness, to hopefully start to improve education around climate change and really spur action. And one of the biggest actions we can take that's free, that is in everyone's interest, is to be smarter about your energy use and improve your conservation. Save money, save on your energy bills, and cut down the amount of greenhouse gases.
Well, let me just put it to you, because I mean, you mentioned earlier, you know, the vineyard in France and in many European countries, you go into a public building and the hallways are dark. There's a little light on the side of the wall. You touch that, and that lights the hallways for as long as you need to go, and then it automatically turns itself off. Why hasn't something like that caught the imagination of lawmakers, for example?
Here in this country?
Yes.
Well, you know, Tim Wirth was on our panel today, and I think he put it right, and he said, look, there's been a massive publicity campaign to play down the implications of climate change. We in this country have enjoyed relatively cheap oil prices, and hence that's led to a lot of wasteful practices. The Europeans consume about half the energy per capita that we do. Japanese are even less than that. And I think, like with so many areas in the climate change fight, we find the Europeans well ahead of ourselves in developing technologies, in using conservation, and so forth.
All right, I want to thank you very much, Kevin Parker, the Global Head of Asset Management at Deutsche Bank, coming in and enlightening us about the world of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you.